Do-hyun pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and watched the stars drift by. He had never been on a spaceship before. In fact, he had barely left Seoul in his 28 years of life. His mother had cried when he told her he was moving to the colony world. She said space was dangerous. She said he should stay home and keep his office job. Maybe she was right. The ship shuddered. Do-hyun gripped his armrest. Around him, other passengers looked up from their tablets and books. A woman across the aisle clutched her daughter closer. The lights flickered once, twice, then went dark. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red. "Please remain calm," a voice said over the speakers. "We are experiencing minor technical difficulties." Minor, Do-hyun knew that word. Companies used it when things were very bad. He had worked in customer service long enough to recognize a lie. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Someone screamed. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. Do-hyun stared at his mask, unsure what to do. He had watched the safety video before takeoff, but he had been checking his phone. He grabbed the mask and pulled it over his face like he had seen in movies. Next to him, an older man fumbled with his own mask. Do-hyun helped him secure it. The man nodded thanks but said nothing. There was nothing to say. The ship tilted. Bags fell from overhead compartments. A child cried. Do-hyun's stomach lurched as the artificial gravity failed. He felt himself lifting from his seat, held down only by his seatbelt. "Emergency pods activating," the voice announced. The voice sounded calm, almost bored. Do-hyun hated that voice. "Proceed to your nearest evacuation station." People unbuckled and tried to move through the chaos. Do-hyun stayed in his seat. Where would he go? He did not know where the evacuation stations were. He had never paid attention during the safety briefing. A woman appeared in the aisle. She was tall, with short hair and a teacher's gentle face. She moved from person to person, helping them unbuckle, pointing them toward the exits. "You," she said, stopping at Do-hyun's row.
"Can you walk?"
"I think so," Do-hyun said. "Then help others who cannot." She was already moving to the next person. Do-hyun unbuckled and helped the old man next to him stand. Together they pushed toward the emergency pods. The ship groaned around them, metal screaming against metal. Do-hyun did not know what was happening. The engines? A collision? An attack? It did not matter. They were going to crash. The evacuation pods were small, barely large enough for 6 people. Do-hyun found himself pushed into one with the old man, the teacher woman, a young man who could not stop shaking, and a middle-aged woman carrying 2 bags of groceries. Even now, during an emergency, she had not dropped her groceries. "Strap in," the teacher woman said. Her voice was steady. Do-hyun wondered how she could be so calm. The pod door sealed. Through a small window, Do-hyun watched the ship break apart. Pieces of hull drifted past. Other pods ejected into space like seeds from a broken fruit. Then they were falling. The pod had no windows except the small one in the door. Do-hyun watched a planet grow larger. It was green and blue, almost like Earth. Almost, the clouds were wrong. Too purple. Too thick. "Is anyone hurt?" the teacher woman asked. The young man shook his head. The woman with groceries said she was fine. The old man said his knee hurt, but he would live. "I am Yoonji," the teacher woman said. "We should know each other's names." "Taijin," the old man said. "Minho," the young man whispered. "Jiwon," said the grocery woman. "Do-hyun," he added. They fell in silence after that. The pod shook as it entered the atmosphere. Heat built up outside. Do-hyun wondered if they would burn up before they hit the ground. He had read somewhere that most people who died in crashes actually died from the fire, not the impact. He closed his eyes and thought of his mother. The impact came suddenly. One moment they were falling, the next they were bouncing, rolling, crashing through something that sounded like trees. The pod hit the ground hard. Do-hyun's head snapped forward despite the harness. He tasted blood, then everything was still. "Is everyone alive?" Yoonji asked. Voices confirmed. "Yes, alive. Hurt, but alive." Do-hyun unbuckled with shaking hands. The pod door was jammed. Minho kicked it once, twice. On the third kick it burst open and sunlight poured in. Do-hyun had never been so happy to see light. They climbed out one by one. Do-hyun stood on alien soil for the first time and looked around. They were in a jungle. Trees rose higher than any building he had seen, their trunks thick as subway cars. The leaves were not green, but a deep blue-purple. The air smelled sweet and wrong. "Look," Jiwon said, pointing. Other pods had fallen nearby. People emerged from them, stumbling, crying, calling for loved ones. Do-hyun counted quickly. Maybe 40 people. Maybe 50. Not many had survived. A man approached their group. He was young, maybe 30, with blood running down his face. "Anyone here a doctor?" he asked. No one answered. "Military? Police? Anyone with survival training?" Silence. The man cursed and moved to the next group. Yoonji looked at Do-hyun. "Have you ever been camping?" "No," Do-hyun admitted. "I worked in an office. I have never even been hiking." "I teach children," Yoonji said. 8-year-olds. "I used to play a lot of survival video games," Minho offered weakly. "I manage a convenience store," Ji-won said. "I can count inventory very well." They all looked at Tae-jin. "I was an accountant," the old man said. "I am retired. I have bad knees." Someone started laughing. It took Do-hyun a moment to realize it was him. The sound was slightly hysterical. Soon the others joined in. They laughed because if they did not laugh, they would cry. "We are going to die here," Minho said. "Maybe," Yoonji agreed. "But not today. Today we figure out shelter." She was right, Do-hyun realized. They had maybe 3 hours of daylight left. The sun, if it was a sun, hung low in the sky. It was larger than Earth's sun, more orange than yellow. People were gathering in the clearing where most of the pods had fallen. Someone suggested they elect a leader. Arguments started immediately. Who was in charge? Who knew what to do? Do-hyun tuned them out and looked at the forest around them. Something moved in the shadows between the trees. Something big. He could not see it clearly, but he could feel it watching them. "We should build a fire," Ji-won said. "How?" Minho asked. No one knew. They spent the next hour trying. Do-hyun had seen movies where people rubbed sticks together. He tried it. His hands hurt and nothing happened. Minho suggested using a battery from one of the pods. They tried that too. It made sparks, but no fire. Finally, Yoonji found a small emergency lighter in her pod's supply kit. They built a fire using dried leaves and broken bits of pod interior. The flames looked wrong, burned wrong, but they were flames. As the sun set, the survivors huddled around small fires. 47 people in total. No soldiers, no doctors, no survival experts. Just ordinary people who had been on their way to start a new life. The night came fast. The temperature dropped. Strange sounds echoed from the jungle. Howls and clicks and sounds Do-hyun had no names for. And then they heard it. Something big moving through the trees. Something breathing. Heavy footsteps that shook the ground. It circled their camp. Round and round. Never coming close enough to see clearly. Just close enough to let them know it was there. Do-hyun sat next to the fire and tried not to think about his mother. He tried not to think about his small apartment in Seoul. He tried not to think about his comfortable bed and his morning coffee and his boring, safe, wonderful life. He tried not to think about how they were going to die here, but first, they had to survive the night. Morning came slowly. Do-hyun had not slept. None of them had. They sat around the dying fire and watched the shadows until the orange sun rose above the alien trees. When there was enough light to see, they examined the damage. Deep claw marks scored the trees around their camp. Whatever had circled them in the night was large enough to reach 3 meters up a trunk. The gouges were deep, each one as wide as Do-hyun's hand. "It could have killed us," Minho said quietly. "But it did not," Yoonji pointed out. "Maybe it was just curious. Or maybe it was full," Ji-won muttered. The survivors gathered in the clearing as the sun climbed higher. 47 people scared and tired. Someone suggested they should vote on what to do next. Someone else said voting was stupid, they needed a leader. The argument started again. Do-hyun listened for a while, then stood up. He was not a loud person. He did not like speaking in front of groups. But someone had to say something. "We need water," he said. People turned to look at him. "And food," he continued. "And better shelter? Everything else can wait," a man in a torn suit scoffed. "And who put you in charge?" "No one," Do-hyun said. "I am just saying what we need. Anyone can work on these things." Yoonji stood next to him. "He is right. We can argue about leadership later. Right now we need to survive." To Do-hyun's surprise, people nodded. They split into groups. Some would look for water. Others would search the pods for supplies. A few would try to build better shelters. Do-hyun joined the water group. He had no idea how to find water on an alien planet, but neither did anyone else. They walked into the jungle, staying close together, jumping at every sound. They found a stream after an hour of searching. The water was clear but had a faint blue tint. Should we drink it? Someone asked. We will die without water, Do-hyun said. But we might die if we drink the wrong water. They stood looking at the stream. Finally, a woman named Hana said she would try it first. She cupped her hands and drank. Everyone watched her. She swallowed, waited, then smiled. It tastes fine, she said. They waited 30 minutes. When Hana did not die or get sick, others drank. Do-hyun drank too. The water was cold and tasted slightly sweet. It was the best water he had ever had. Back at camp, other groups reported their findings. The pods contained emergency rations, enough for 3 weeks if they were careful. They had basic medical supplies, some tools, blankets, and one working communicator that could not reach anyone. Minho had found something interesting. The pods have batteries, he said. Big ones. We can use them. For what? Someone asked. Minho shrugged. I do not know yet. But batteries are useful. That night they built better shelters using pieces of the pods. They were not good shelters, but they kept out the wind. The thing in the jungle came back, circling again. But this time Do-hyun noticed something. It always stayed the same distance away, as if there was an invisible line it would not cross. It is afraid of the fire, Yoonji suggested. Or the metal from the pods, Ji-won added. Or us, Minho said. Days passed. They fell into a routine. Every morning they held a meeting. Everyone could speak. Everyone could suggest ideas. Most ideas did not work, but some did. Tae-jin, the old accountant, started keeping records. He wrote down everything they tried. What worked, what failed, how many rations they had left. His careful notes became their survival guide. One day, Minho nearly died. They were testing foods from the jungle. They had to eat something besides rations eventually. Minho found a fruit that looked safe. It was round and purple and smelled good. He took a bite before anyone could stop him. Within minutes, his throat began to swell. His face turned red. He could not breathe. Ji-won acted without thinking. She grabbed Minho and forced her fingers down his throat, making him vomit. The purple fruit came up. Slowly, Minho's breathing returned to normal. You idiot, Ji-won said, but her hands were shaking. You could have died. I know, Minho gasped. I am sorry. Yoonji wrote in her notebook. Purple round fruit, poison, do not eat. That became their method. Test things carefully. Document everything. Learn from mistakes. They learned that the blue-purple leaves could be boiled to make them soft. They learned that small lizard-like creatures were safe to eat if cooked. They learned that the red moss that grew on rocks would make them sick. But the yellow moss was harmless. Every mistake taught them something. Every failure brought them closer to survival. Do-hyun surprised himself. He had spent his whole life avoiding anything uncomfortable. He hated getting dirty. He hated bugs. He hated physical work. But here on this alien world, he found himself doing all of these things. He built shelters. He caught the lizard creatures for food. He waded into the stream to catch fish that were not really fish but tasted similar. His hands developed calluses. His soft office worker body became lean and hard. One evening, as they sat around the fire, Eunji voiced what Do-hyun had been thinking. We are doing this wrong, she said. Everyone looked at her. We keep trying to survive like we would on Earth, she explained. But this is not Earth. We need to think differently. What do you mean? Ji-won asked. We are trying to remember survival shows and camping trips, Yoonji said. But none of us really know survival. We are not experts. Maybe that is good. How is that good? Someone asked. Because we have no bad habits, Yoonji said. We are not stuck thinking there is only one right way to do things. We can try anything. Do-hyun understood. We are like aliens visiting Earth, he said. We assume nothing. We test everything. It became their philosophy. When faced with a problem, they did not ask what the correct solution was. They tried different solutions until something worked. The creature in the jungle kept watching them. They named it the Night Walker because it only came after dark. One night, Minho had an idea. What if it hunts using electricity? He said. What? Do-hyun asked. Minho explained. Some of the electronics from the pods gave off faint electrical signals. The creature always stayed away from these signals. Maybe it senses our electronics, Minho said. Like a shark sensing electrical fields in water. It sounded crazy, but they tried it anyway. Minho built a device using pod batteries and wiring. It created a weak electrical field around their camp. That night, the Night Walker did not come close. It circled far away, confused. It worked, Ji-won said, amazed. A gamer just outthought an alien predator, Taejin said with a laugh. That was the moment Do-hyun realized they might actually survive, not because they were experts, not because they were strong or smart, but because they were willing to try anything, fail, and try again. Humans, he thought, were very good at being stubborn. Weeks turned into months. Their camp became a small village. They built real houses using the hard alien wood. They planted seeds from the emergency rations, hoping they would grow. Against all logic, some did. They created a schedule: water duty, food gathering, shelter repair, scouting. Everyone did everything. The office worker learned to hunt. The teacher learned to build. The gamer learned to farm. The store manager learned to treat injuries. The accountant learned to cook alien food. They had no hierarchy. Decisions were made by discussion and vote. Sometimes they argued. Sometimes they made wrong choices. But they made them together. One day, 3 months after the crash, they saw lights in the sky. A ship descended, sleek and silver. It was not human. When it landed, creatures emerged that looked like large lizards walking on 2 legs. They wore armor and carried weapons. The survivors gathered, nervous. First contact with aliens. None of them knew the proper protocol. The lead alien approached. It studied them with large yellow eyes. "You survived," it said in perfect human language. The translator it wore buzzed slightly. "Yes," Yoonji said, stepping forward as their unofficial speaker. "Impossible," the alien said. "This planet is classified extinction class. How many military specialists do you have?" "None," Yoonji said. "Survival experts?" "None." "Environmental engineers? Xenobiologists? Combat medics?" "We have a teacher, an office worker, a store manager, a retired accountant, and a young man who played video games," Yoonji said. The alien stared at them for a long moment. "You are joking," it finally said. "No," Do-hyun said, stepping forward. "We are just ordinary people. We had no training. We just tried our best." The alien looked at their village, at the houses, at the farms, at the defenses against the Nightwalker, at the detailed notebooks full of observations and failed experiments. "We need to study you," the alien said softly. The alien introduced itself as Commander Thexus of the Vrax Concordance. It walked through the human village with what looked like amazement, though its reptilian face was hard to read. "You built this?" Thexus asked, touching one of the wooden houses. "This wood. We tried to cut it. Our tools broke. We learned that if you soak it in the clay from the riverbed for 3 days it becomes soft," Jiwon explained. "Then it hardens again when it dries. Becomes even stronger." Thexus made a sound that might have been laughter. "Impossible. Our scientists did not discover this." "Your scientists probably did not have 3 days to wait," Minho said. "We had nothing but time." More Vrax arrived over the following days. Scientists, military observers, even what appeared to be reporters. They interviewed the survivors, studied their methods, examined their village. A Vrax scientist named Kelth seemed particularly interested in Yoonji's notebooks. "You documented every failure?" Kelth asked, flipping through pages of crossed-out ideas and notes. "Of course," Yoonji said. "Failures teach us what not to do. That is valuable information." "We Vrax dispose of failed research," Kelth admitted. "It is considered shameful." "That seems wasteful," Yoonji said simply. The Vrax were fascinated by the human farming attempt. The survivors had planted emergency seeds never meant for alien soil. Most died, but a few had adapted. Somehow. "This should not work," a Vrax biologist said, examining a small corn plant. "The soil chemistry is wrong. The day-night cycle is wrong. Everything is wrong." "We added the yellow moss," Taejin explained. "It changed the soil somehow. Made it better." "You experimented with the soil?" "We experimented with everything," Taejin said. "I have a spreadsheet if you want to see it." The Vrax seemed confused by the concept of a spreadsheet being used for farming. What amazed the aliens most was the defense system against the Nightwalker. Minho showed them the electrical field generator he had built from salvaged pod parts. "You determined the creature's hunting method through observation alone?" Thexus asked. "I mean, it took a while," Minho said. "I had a lot of wrong guesses first. I thought maybe it hunted by smell, then by sound, then by heat. The electricity thing was my 4th try. And you kept trying after 3 failures? What else was I going to do?" Minho asked. "Give up and get eaten." The Vrax exchanged looks. One of them spoke in their own language. Thexus responded, then turned back to the humans. "We are discussing something," Thexus said. "May we observe you for a longer period?" "We want to understand your methods," the survivors agreed. What choice did they have? Over the next weeks, the Vraks watched everything. They watched the morning meetings where everyone shared ideas. They watched people vote on decisions. They watched humans argue, compromise, and work together. "You have no leader?" a Vraks officer asked Do-hyun one day. "Not really," Do-hyun said. "Yoonji speaks for us sometimes, but anyone can make suggestions. This is chaos." "Maybe," Do-hyun said. "But it works for us." What the Vraks found most confusing was human emotion. When Taejin fell ill with a fever, the survivors used precious medicine to save him. The Vraks questioned this. "He is old," Kelth said, "and his skills are not unique. From a resource perspective, allowing him to die would preserve supplies for younger, more useful members." Jiwon had been nearby. She walked over to Kelth, looked the alien in the eye, and spoke quietly. "Taejin is our friend," she said. "We do not let friends die because it is convenient. But it is inefficient." "I do not care," Jiwon said. "Efficiency is not the only thing that matters." Kelth wrote this down in their notes. Taejin recovered. And something interesting happened after. The group seemed stronger, more unified. They worked better together. The Vraks noticed this. "Your illogical compassion somehow improved group performance," Thexus observed. "I do not understand this." "It is called morale," Yoonji explained. "When people know you will care for them, they care about the group. They work harder. They take risks for each other." "Curious," Thexus said. The Vraks stayed for 3 months. In that time, they watched the humans continue to adapt and improve. The village grew. The farms expanded. New defenses were built. One day, Minho approached Do-hyun with an idea. "I have been watching the Nightwalker," Minho said. "I think it is intelligent." "What?" "I have been leaving food scraps at the edge of our perimeter," Minho explained. "At first it just took them, but now it leaves things behind. Bones arranged in patterns. Stones stacked in piles, and why would it do that?" Do-hyun asked. "Maybe it is trying to communicate," Minho said. "Or maybe it is thanking us." "I do not know," they told the others. Jiwon started leaving better food. The Nightwalkers started coming closer, though still staying outside the village. One night, they actually saw it clearly for the first time. It was huge, easily 3 meters tall at the shoulder. 6 legs, 4 eyes, covered in dark scales, terrifying, but it did not attack. It took the food Jiwon left, then made a sound like a purr, and disappeared into the jungle. "It is saying thank you," Jiwon said with certainty. The Vraks were horrified. "You are feeding the apex predator." "It was going to eat anyway," Jiwon pointed out. "Now it eats what we give it. And it protects us from other creatures." Indeed, smaller predators that had sometimes approached the village now stayed away. The Nightwalker had claimed the humans as its territory. "You formed a symbiotic relationship with a creature that has killed trained military units," Thexus said. It sounded impressed and disturbed at the same time. "We made a friend," Jiwon corrected. Before the Vraks left, they held a formal meeting with the survivors. Thexus stood before the gathered humans and spoke. "We came here expecting to find corpses," the commander said. "Every species that has tried to settle this planet has died within weeks. The Vraks Concordance lost an entire military outpost here. 200 trained soldiers. Gone in 10 days, Thexus paused. You are not soldiers. You have no training, no expertise. By all logic, you should be dead. Yet here you stand. You have built a thriving settlement on a planet we classified as uninhabitable." "We got lucky," Do-hyun said. "No," Thexus said firmly. "Luck does not explain this. We have observed your methods. Your willingness to fail and learn, your democratic decision-making, your emotional bonds that somehow strengthen rather than weaken you, your ability to adapt instead of applying rigid solutions." The commander looked at each human in turn. "The Galactic Council must know of this," Thexus said. "Your species has developed what appears to be a universal survival protocol, one that works without expertise, without preparation, without conventional wisdom." "We just did what made sense," Yoonji said. "Exactly," Thexus said, "and that is what makes it remarkable." The Vraks departed, promising to return. They left supplies, communication equipment, and a promise to help if needed. After they were gone, the survivors sat around their fire as they had every night since the crash. "We are famous, apparently," Mio said. "Famous for being unprepared," Taejin added with a chuckle. Famous for surviving anyway, Yunji corrected. Do-hyun looked around at his friends. The office worker, the teacher, the gamer, the store manager, the accountant, the most ordinary people imaginable. Do you think they will really tell others about us? Ji-won asked. Probably, Yunji said, though I wonder what they will say. What the Vrak said, as it turned out, would change the galaxy. News spread quickly through the Concordance and beyond. The story of 47 untrained humans surviving on an extinction-class world fascinated everyone. Scientists wanted to study them. Military commanders wanted to learn from them. Philosophers debated what it meant. They called it the Gaishon Protocol, named after what the humans had called their new home. The word meant pioneer village in their language. The protocol was simple. Assume you know nothing. Test everything. Document all results, even failures. Make decisions together. Value people over efficiency. Adapt to your environment instead of fighting it. Never give up. It seemed too simple. Too obvious. Yet when other species tried these methods, they found that they worked. The protocol was not about having the right answer. It was about being willing to find answers through trial and error. The humans on Gaishon continued their lives, unaware of how much their survival would matter. They farmed. They built. They explored. They made mistakes and learned from them. And at night, the Nightwalker, who they had named Guardian, sat at the edge of their village, watching over the strange, soft creatures who had somehow become its family. Life, as Do-hyun often thought, was very strange sometimes. 5 years after the crash, the village on Gaishon looked nothing like it had in the beginning. Real buildings stood where crude shelters once were. Fields stretched across the cleared land, growing both earth crops and native plants that the humans had learned to eat. Children played in the streets, babies born on this alien world who had never seen Earth. Do-hyun stood at the edge of the village, looking out at the jungle. He barely recognized himself anymore. The soft office worker was gone, replaced by someone with sun-darkened skin and strong hands. He wore clothes made from plant fibers the humans had learned to weave. He carried a walking stick carved from alien wood. Still thinking about Seoul? Ji-won asked, walking up beside him. Sometimes, Do-hyun admitted, but that life seems far away now. Like it happened to someone else? Ji-won nodded. She understood. They all did. They were not the same people who had crashed here. A ship appeared in the sky, descending toward the village landing pad. The humans had built it 2 years ago when visitors became common. Scientists came to study them. Military officials came to learn their methods. Even tourists came sometimes, wanting to see the famous survivors. Today's visitors were different. The ship bore the mark of the Galactic Council, the governing body that oversaw hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. Yunji met the delegation. She was the unofficial ambassador now. Though she insisted she was still just a teacher, she wore simple clothes and no symbols of authority. That confused many aliens who expected clear hierarchies. The council representative was a being that looked like a floating jellyfish with dozens of tentacles. Its name was unpronounceable to humans, so it went by the shortened version. Pell. Welcome to Gaishon, Yunji said. Thank you for receiving us. Pell responded through its translator. We have an urgent matter to discuss. They gathered in the community hall, a large building at the village center. The original survivors were all there. 47 people who had learned to survive together. They had lost none of their number in 5 years, something the Vrak still called impossible. Pell hovered at the front of the room, tentacles writhing nervously. The Krell Empire is dying, Pell said without introduction. Silence filled the hall. A plague, Pell continued. It began 6 months ago on their homeworld. It spreads quickly, kills within days. Their best doctors cannot stop it. Their scientists cannot create a cure. They have exhausted every known medical protocol. That is terrible, Yunji said. But why tell us? Because you are humanity's experts in solving impossible problems, Pell said. The Krell have requested help. Specifically, they requested the humans from Gaishon. Do-hyun felt everyone's eyes turn toward him and the others. We are not doctors, he said. We are just survivors. Exactly, Pell said. The Krell have doctors. What they need are survivors, the council representative explained. The Gaishon protocol had been studied across the galaxy for 5 years. Many species had tried to implement it. Some succeeded. Many failed because they could not overcome their own training and expertise. They knew too much about the right way to do things. The Krell need people who will approach their plague with no assumptions, Pell said. People who will try everything, fail safely and learn quickly. People who will work together without rigid hierarchy. People who value all ideas equally. You need people who have no idea what they are doing, Taejin said dryly. Essentially, yes, Pell agreed without irony. The survivors looked at each other. Finally, Minho spoke. When do we leave? The journey to the Krell homeworld took 2 weeks. During that time, the humans studied everything they could about Krell biology and the plague. Much of it made no sense to them, but they read it anyway. Yoonji took notes. Taejin created spreadsheets. Minho built computer models he barely understood. We are going to fail, Do-hyun said one evening. Yes, Yoonji agreed. Many times. People might die while we fail. Yes, but we will keep trying, Ji-won added. Because that is what we do. The Krell homeworld was beautiful and dying. Cities stood empty. Hospitals overflowed. The Krell themselves were tall beings with smooth skin that changed colors with their emotions. Right now, most of them were gray, the color of despair. The Krell lead scientist Vex met them at the spaceport. Its skin flickered between gray and blue. You are the humans, Vex said. Forgive me, but you look very ordinary. We are, Do-hyun said. That is kind of our thing. Vex took them to the research facility. It was massive, filled with equipment the humans had never seen before. Hundreds of Krell scientists worked desperately, running tests, analyzing data, searching for answers. Show us what you have tried, Yoonji said. Notebook ready. For 3 days they reviewed the Krell research. The scientists had tried every antiviral drug, every antibacterial treatment, every immune system booster. They had analyzed the plague's genetic structure. They had created computer simulations. They had followed every known medical protocol. Nothing worked. On the 4th day, the humans held a meeting. Just the original survivors sitting in a small room away from the Krell scientists. Thoughts? Yoonji asked. They are too smart, Minho said. They know too much about medicine. They keep trying things that should work based on their knowledge. We need to ignore what should work, Ji-won said, and just try random things. That sounds dangerous, a Krell scientist said from the doorway. Vex had been listening. Medical research requires careful methodology. That methodology has not worked, Taejin pointed out gently. Perhaps it is time to try something else. Vex's skin flashed red, anger or frustration, but then it faded to a thoughtful purple. What do you propose? Vex asked. We try everything, Yoonji said. Fast. We combine things that should not be combined. We test ideas that seem stupid. We document what fails and why, and we do not give up. Vex was quiet for a moment. You could kill patience. You are killing patience now by doing nothing new, Do-hyun said. It came out harsher than he meant, but it was true. Vex's skin cycled through several colors before settling on pale yellow. Acceptance. Very well, the scientist said. What do you need? They needed lab space, volunteers who were already dying anyway, and supplies. The Krell provided everything. What followed was controlled chaos. The humans tried combinations of medicines that Krell doctors said were impossible. They tested temperatures that were too hot or too cold. They introduced substances that had nothing to do with medicine. Attempt 1. Failed. The patient showed no improvement. Attempt 2. Failed. Worse than attempt 1. Attempt 3. Failed. The patient's condition stabilized but did not improve. Yoonji documented everything. Taejin tracked patterns. Minho looked for connections that made no logical sense. Ji-won kept everyone fed and rested. Do-hyun coordinated with the Krell scientists, translating human intuition into something they could understand. Attempt 15. Failed. But the patient lived 2 days longer than expected. That is something, Yoonji said, making notes. What did we do differently? They reviewed the process. They had combined 3 different medicines that, according to Krell medical knowledge, should neutralize each other. They should do nothing, but they had done something. Try it again, Do-hyun said, but change one variable. Maybe the temperature. Attempt 16 failed. The patient died faster. Attempt 17 failed. Same as attempt 15. They kept at it. Days became weeks. The humans tried 87 different approaches. 87 failures. The Krell scientists grew more desperate. Some openly questioned why they had trusted humans, but Vex watched the humans work. Watched them fail without shame. Watched them encourage each other after every disappointment. Watched them find new enthusiasm for attempt 88 even after 87 failures. You never lose hope, Vex observed to Yunji. Hope is not about success, Yunji said. Hope is about the next attempt. Attempt 88, partial success. The patient's symptoms reduced by 30%. The humans celebrated like they had cured the plague entirely. The Krell scientists were baffled. It was only 30%, Vex said. It was not 0%, Minho countered. That means we are close. They built on attempt 88. Modified it. Adjusted variables. Tried different combinations. Attempt 94. 50% reduction in symptoms. Attempt 97. 70%. And then Minho had an idea. He was tired. He had been staring at the same data for hours. His eyes were blurry. He grabbed the wrong chemical compound from the shelf. He mixed it with the treatment from attempt 97. By all Krell medical knowledge, it should do nothing. The compounds were incompatible. They should neutralize each other completely. Wait, Vex said, seeing what Minho had done. That will not work. Probably not, Minho agreed. But we are trying it anyway. They administered the treatment to a volunteer patient. A young Krell who was dying and had agreed to let them try anything. For 12 hours, nothing happened. Then the patient's fever broke. The skin lesions began to heal. The blood chemistry normalized. By the next day, the patient was sitting up, eating, talking. By the third day, the patient was declared cured. The humans sat in stunned silence. Vex stared at them. How? The Krell scientist asked. Those compounds should not work together. I do not know, Minho admitted. I grabbed the wrong bottle. You made a mistake. Yes, and the mistake saved my species. Apparently, Minho said. He looked like he might cry. 10 years had passed since the crash. Geishon was no longer a small village. It was a thriving colony of 200 humans. Children ran through the streets, the first generation born under an alien sun. Ships came and went regularly, bringing supplies, visitors, and those who wanted to learn the human way of survival. Dohyun stood in what they called the archive, a building that housed Yunji's notebooks from the early days. Visitors came from across the galaxy to read them, to see the documented failures and successes, to understand how unprepared people had survived the impossible. Ambassador Dohyun, a voice said. He turned. He still was not used to the title. He was not an ambassador. He was just an office worker who had learned to survive. A young Krell approached, its skin bright orange with excitement. My name is Rix. I'm a student. I study the Gaichon protocol. Welcome, Dohyun said. Though I am not sure what I can teach you, everything we know is in those notebooks. I have read them all, Rix said, but I have questions. How did you overcome fear? Dohyun laughed. We did not. We were afraid every day, but you kept going. Yes, Dohyun said, because being afraid and giving up are different things. Rix's skin shifted to thoughtful purple. My professors say the Gaichon protocol only works for humans. They say other species cannot learn it. Your professors are wrong, Dohyun said. The protocol works for anyone willing to fail. He showed Rix around the colony. They visited the farms where Earth plants and alien plants grew side by side. They visited the workshops where humans and visiting aliens worked together, combining technologies in new ways. They visited the school where Yunji taught both human children and young aliens. Everyone learns together, Yunji explained to Rix. The children teach us as much as we teach them. No one is the expert. We are all just learning. That evening, Dohyun received an urgent message. The Galactic Council needed help again. This time it was the Vrax. Commander Thexis, now an old friend, explained the situation over the communication link. We have discovered a habitable planet in unclaimed space, Thexis said, perfect for colonization. But we have failed 3 times to establish a settlement. The environment defeats us in ways we cannot predict. And you want our help, Dohyun said. We want your people to teach our people, Thexis corrected. The Vrax are excellent soldiers but poor survivors. We need to learn the human approach. Dohyun consulted with the other original survivors. They held a vote as they always did. The decision was unanimous. They would help, but this time they would not go alone. They would bring others who had learned the Gaichon protocol. Humans, yes, but also Krell scientists who had learned to embrace failure, Vrax soldiers who had learned to question orders, even a few from other species who had studied on Gachon. The expedition team was diverse, chaotic, and completely unprepared by traditional standards. Perfect. The planet was harsh. Acidic rain, extreme temperature swings, predators that seemed to hunt in coordinated packs. Within a week, the traditional Vrax methods had failed. We should establish a fortified position, a Vrax captain suggested. Why? Minho asked. Because it is standard protocol. Has standard protocol worked here before? Jiwon asked gently. The captain's silence was answer enough. They tried the human approach instead. Small shelters scattered to avoid presenting a single target. Constant observation and documentation. Testing different responses to the environment. Democratic decision-making where even the lowest-ranked Vrax soldier could suggest ideas. It was messy. Arguments broke out constantly. Different species had different instincts, different fears. But slowly they learned to work together. A young Vrax soldier named Kex came up with the breakthrough. The predators hunted in packs, yes, but they followed specific patterns based on the planet's magnetic fields. By disrupting those fields with simple magnets, the predators became confused and scattered. Excellent work, Thexus said. I learned from the human Minho, Kex said. He taught me to observe without assuming I knew the answer. The colony succeeded. Not perfectly. They lost supplies, made countless mistakes, and endured many setbacks. But they succeeded. And more importantly, the Vrax learned. They learned to question their training, to try new things, to accept failure as part of learning. When they returned to Gaichon, Thexus spoke privately with Dohyun. You have changed the Vrax, the commander said. For 3,000 years we have followed strict military protocols. Now our young soldiers question orders. They experiment. They fail without shame. That sounds like progress, Dohyun said. It is chaos, Thexus said. But the commander's tone was not angry. It was amused. Chaos that works. News of the Vrax colony's success spread. More species wanted to learn. The Gachon protocol was taught in universities. Military academies studied it. Survival schools based their entire curriculum on it. But there was resistance too. Traditional experts who insisted there was a right way to do things. Leaders who feared what would happen if everyone questioned authority. Scientists who claimed that proper methodology could not be replaced by trial and error. One day, a formal debate was held at the Galactic Council. The topic, is the Gaichon protocol superior to traditional expertise? Yunji was asked to speak for the human side. She stood before an audience of thousands, beings from hundreds of worlds, and felt the same fear she had felt 10 years ago when their pod crashed. I'm a teacher, she began. I taught 8-year-olds how to read. I had no survival training, no expertise. When we crashed on Gaichon, I was certain I would die. The audience was silent. But I did not die, Yunji continued. None of us did. Not because we were experts. Not because we had the right training. We survived because we had no choice but to try. To fail, to learn, to try again. She held up her old notebook, worn and stained. This notebook contains 1,247 documented failures. Mistakes that could have killed us, nearly did kill us in some cases. But each failure taught us something. Each mistake brought us closer to survival. Yunji looked around the chamber. Traditional expertise is valuable. I do not deny this. But expertise can also be a cage. It tells you there is only one right way. It makes you afraid to try new things because they are not in the protocol. She paused. The Gachon protocol is not about rejecting expertise. It is about being willing to fail. About being willing to look stupid. About understanding that sometimes the person who knows nothing is the one who finds the answer that the expert missed. The debate continued for hours. In the end, the council reached no official conclusion. But something had changed. The galaxy had seen what unprepared people could accomplish. That knowledge could not be erased. Years passed. The original survivors grew older. Doyun's hair turned gray. Taejin needed help walking, but they were still alive, still learning, still trying new things. New challenges arose. A species needed help terraforming a toxic world. Another needed help surviving in a zero-gravity environment. Each time someone requested the Gaichon team. Each time they said yes, not because they were experts, because they were not. One evening, 15 years after the crash, the original survivors gathered around a fire. It was tradition. No matter where they traveled, no matter what challenges they faced, they always made time to sit together. "Do you ever wonder what we would be doing if we had not crashed?" Minho asked. "I would be in my apartment. Playing video games," he answered himself. "I would be teaching third graders how to multiply," Yunji said. "I would be managing a convenience store." Jiwon added. "I would be retired and bored." Taejin said. They all looked at Do-hyun. "I would be in my office," he said, "sending emails, attending meetings, going home to an empty apartment, watching television, going to sleep, doing it all again the next day." He looked around at his friends, his family. "This life is harder," Do-hyun said. "It is scarier. I have nearly died more times than I can count. But I would not change it." "Because we are making a difference," Yunji said. "Because we are together," Jiwon corrected. Both were true. The fire crackled. Guardian, the night walker who had been with them since the beginning, lay at the edge of the light. Its eyes glowed in the darkness. After 15 years, it still watched over them, still protected the strange soft creatures it had adopted. "What is our legacy?" Minho asked quietly. "When we are gone, what will people remember?" "They will remember that we were unprepared," Taejin said. "They will remember that we failed," Jiwon added. "They will remember that we tried anyway," Yunji finished. Do-hyun looked up at the alien stars. Somewhere out there, species were learning to question their training, to embrace failure, to try the impossible, all because 47 ordinary people had refused to die quietly. "I think," Do-hyun said slowly, "they will remember that expertise is not everything, that sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to be too ignorant to know it is impossible, and too stubborn to quit when you figure it out," Minho added with a grin. They sat in comfortable silence. The fire burned low. The alien night settled around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new ways to fail before succeeding. But tonight they were just 5 friends who had survived together, and that, Do-hyun thought, was the real legacy of Gaishon. Not the protocol, not the fame, not the lives saved. The legacy was simple. When everything seems impossible, try anyway.